that faith was active along with his works, and faith was completed by his works. And the scripture was fulfilled that says, Abraham believed God, and it was counted to him as righteousness, and he was called a friend of God. Verse 24, you see that a person is justified by works and not by faith alone. And in the same way was not also Rahab the prostitute justified by works, when she received the messengers and sent them out by another way? For as the body apart from the spirit is dead, so also faith apart from the works is dead. Amen. What a fantastic passage of scripture. So there's a couple of things to point out here, and something that we've got to grasp with, and many people, many theologians over the years have really struggled to come to grips with that, because we get to Galatians chapter 2, and Paul says, you want to be saved, you can only be saved by faith and faith alone. And then we get to James, and James is like, yeah, you've got faith, great. Show me your faith by what you do. And many people try to grip with this thing. And the first thing we got to understand is that that belief and faith are not the same thing. Okay? They are related, and they're both necessary, but belief and faith are not the same thing. Let me give you an example, okay? If you were to meet Adam one day, Adam and Eve, you met, if you were to go back in time, just after the fall, you say, hey, Adam, do you believe in a God? He's going to look at you funny. You mean that time that I was braaiing with him before I sinned against him? Of course he believes in God. He believes that he is there. Okay, now here's a different question to ask Adam. Adam, did you have faith in God? Did you put your trust in him? Did you put your faith in him? You see, it's two different things. You can believe something exists, but that doesn't mean that you necessarily put your faith in it. Right? I believe that my son Oliver is the most amazing kid in the world. But I'm not anytime soon going to put my faith in him to drive my car around town. You understand what I'm saying? I don't trust him with my car, and that's not because I believe he's a bad person. In fact, some of you might think I'm being an irresponsible parent if I were to give him, a 6-year-old, the keys to my car. Agreed? It's not appropriate for me to put my faith in him to drive a car as of yet. But when it comes to God, it's a completely different story, because we confess with our mouth, and that's part of the salvation story, but it needs to be backed up by a belief in the heart. I believe in my heart, but here's the problem, okay? I can hear you confess. I can't see what's going on in your heart. Okay? God can see what's going on in your heart, but I can't. Now, you might say, okay, but, I don't have to prove anything. Only God can judge me. And that's true, but that's usually said by people that don't want to be held accountable, right? Have you ever noticed that? The people saying that on social media, only God can judge me, are the type of people that really wouldn't want to have God judge them. Right? Have you ever prayed that prayer? God, judge me. Right? Yeah, okay. It's a dangerous prayer to pray, right? Now, I think it's a good prayer, but we'll get there just now. But the reason why it's important that you want to show your good works, remember what was said about Jesus, that he grew in favor with God and with man. Why is it so important to grow in favor with man? Is it good to care what people think about you? Now you're all confused. Neelis is like, yeah. To a certain extent, yes. To a certain extent, no. We're going to talk about that just now. But I just want you to think about it. Okay? Why is it so important that somebody else knows what's going on in your heart? Why is it so important that we get baptized in front of people? Why is it so important that you get married in front of people? Okay? Witnesses. What are the witnesses for? Accountability. Okay? You see, when we don't value accountability, then we don't feel the necessity to show works. Okay? We don't feel the necessity to prove ourselves. Okay, now some of you might be a bit confused. I'm gonna sort this out just now, but just bear with me for a second. Okay, think about this. Okay, if you're married, it's a little bit easier. If maybe you've got a boyfriend or a girlfriend, or if you're single, just think of the hypothetical spouse that you'd one day want to be married to. Okay, would you care what they thought about you? If you are married, do you care what your spouse thinks about you? Is that important to you? No, right? Why? Well, because you value them. You value their opinion. To a certain extent, you do care what they think about you. Right? If you came to me for counseling and you said, I don't care what my wife thinks about me, we got other problems to sort out. Would you agree with me? Okay, you don't have to be a pastor to figure that one out. That should be an obvious one to you. Okay? If you're going out with somebody and you say, I don't care what she thinks about me, I'm like, oh shucks, boy. Yeah. You know, I might be colorblind, but I know what a red flag looks like, eh? See, I care what people think about me when I value them. Okay, the problem is not that we care what people think about. The problem is that often we care what the wrong people think about us. Right? You should care what people think about you. But you should be more focused on what God thinks about you. Does that make sense? I want to be completely and utterly focused on what God thinks about me. I want to value what my friends think about me. Is this starting to make sense? Okay. So when it comes to belief and faith, I do have an obligation to, in a sense, show my works. It's fine for me to say that I believe in God, but if you're my friend, you should also be sussing me out. Okay, Luke, you say you believe in God, but the way that you spoke to your wife, I don't think that's indicative of somebody that believes in God. I don't think that matches what I think you are capable of. But you can't judge me, right? You don't know where in the Bible does it say that it's bad to judge. Okay? It says, do not judge, otherwise you'll be judged to the same standard. Okay? And it's in the same context of, before you take the speck out of somebody else's eye, remove the plank out of your eye. And a lot of people interpret that as, well, let's just not judge at all. No. All good friendship and good parenting and good accountability is based on judgment. Okay? When my kid misbehaves, I pass judgment on his behavior, and if necessary, I apply the Board of Education to the seat of learning. Right? The fivefold ministry comes into play. Right? What have I done? I've judged him, but in particular, I've judged him against the person that I think that he can be. Right? And if you're a good friend, you're looking at your friend and you're going, you literally judging their actions. Does his works tell me that he has a faith that values the things of God, puts his trust in God? And if the answer is no, if you're a good friend, you're going to come and tell me and say, Luke, I love you, but I've been sitting there judging you. No, don't start with that. That's probably not going to go down well. But what you are going to say is, hey, Luke, right, your actions don't befit somebody that I know you can be. I know you to be this guy, and this guy. And what you did there, that's not you. Right? Because the alternative is this, that you see somebody carrying on with sin that will ultimately end their life physically and spiritually for all eternity, and you do nothing about it. You a good friend now? Probably not, right? All I can say is Amu loves me a lot. Lol. Okay, moving on. Okay, but it's also important to note that works is not faith itself. Okay? So we want to sort this out. Okay? Paul says in Galatians 2, you can be saved by faith alone. James is saying, okay, cool, you got faith. I'll show you my faith by my works. No, but James is not saying that works is faith. He's just saying that works is the evidence of faith. Faith is what's going on in the heart. We can't see it. Works is the gauge by which we see what's going on with the engine. Right? You know when you drive your car, you can't see the engine. How do you know what's going on with it? You check the gauges. Right? Well, most of the people in this room check the gauges, okay? All those with speeding fines, the conviction of the Lord will come upon you in this moment. But and faith is something very similar. I can't see what's going on in your heart, but I look at the gauges and I see, okay, something's going on here. Okay? And I'm looking at that. And with that, I'm making an assessment because I love you, because you've invited this you've asked me, hey, can you hold me accountable because you value accountable, because you want to be closer to Jesus. I'm going to do X, Y, and Z. Can you hold me accountable to these things? And so we must understand that works is not faith, but works definitely tells us that faith is there. And this is what James starts off this passage. He says, listen to this question in verse 14. It says, if someone says he has faith but does not have works, can that faith save him? That's a fantastic question. Okay, so you say you're a Christian, stuff isn't happening in your life. Okay? How are you then saved? By what other means do we judge? Give me a rubric, because apparently you're working off a different rubric. How do we judge what's going on in your heart if it isn't by works? So, just to sum this up, works, not words, are the greatest indication of what you believe. Okay, you can say X, Y, and Z. And now, let me just backtrack here. Confessing belief is by no means not important. Okay, when Paul outlines his 2-step process to get saved, he says, confess with your mouth. It is important to confess. Okay? But a greater indication of what you believe is what you do. And in the chapter just before chapter 2, it's chapter 1, I know, deep, stick with me. James says, like, some people, they're like a person that looks at themselves in the mirror and they go away and they forget what they look like. And what is he saying? He's talking about the fact that sometimes we need to do this self-assessment. We look at ourselves in the mirror, and for some of us, we go away and we're like, I don't want to face that. Let's just forget. But if you value the things of God, what you're going to end up doing is you're going to look at yourself in the mirror, and a mature Christian learns to self-audit. Right? Let's take stock of the things that we got right, Okay, this year we set out these faith goals. Okay, great. I'm going to spend some time in prayer thanking the Lord that we got these things right, I got these things wrong. Okay, this is what I'm going to focus on and put faith goals on for next year. Okay? That should be a normal thing that a mature Christian does. And what's even better is before you wait for your friend to come tune you about the things that you're doing wrong, you proactively go to your friends and say, hey, if there was something that you think I should focus on this year, what would it be? If there was something that would make me more of a mature Christian, what would you think? Is there a character flaw I could work on? Right? And we're going to talk about why in just a minute. But ultimately, what you do, if you want to know what you believe, go take an assessment of what you do. One of my mentors, when I was still in Stellenbosch, said, hey, Luke, you show me your budget. You show me your monthly budget, and I'll show you what you believe. Right? Because where you put your money is probably what you believe. It's a little bit of a generalized statement, but I think you get the idea. Right? There's nothing like money that talks. So it's not just that what we confess. You must confess. It's very important to confess. But it's also what you act out. So let's just think about the things that we value, okay? So I've briefly mentioned salvation process. Okay, how do we get saved? Romans 10, verse 9. I just said it just now. Not a trick question. How do we get saved? Anybody? Confess with your mouth, believe in your heart that God raised him from the dead. You'll be saved. Okay, you're saved. Well done. Turn to the person next to you and say, you're saved. Well done. Yay. Okay. And very often, when the gospel was preached, people repented and they were immediately instructed to do something right after that. What was that? Get baptized, okay? So we've believed. Yes. Fantastic. Go be obedient to get baptized. Oh, can I go home and pray about it? I just don't know if I'm ready now. Do you see how strange this starts to sound? I've received Jesus. Yes, I'm going to heaven. Okay, let's see it. Get baptized. Can I pray about it? I don't know if I'm ready right now. You know, and then we read further on into James. Go read through James, it's a fascinating book. He says, yeah, you know, some of you're like, next week I'll do that. I'll go there. And I'll go do that. And he says, you foolish people, you don't even know when your life will be taken from you. The time for obedience, the times for works is not next week. It's not sometime after you've prayed about it. For some of us, we love to use the things of God to excuse ourselves from doing explicitly what God has commanded us to do. Sounds very spiritual, right? God said this, God said that. God said you must get into a relationship. Then apparently God changes and he said get out of the relationship. Was he wrong the first time or the last time? God said go to that place. God said go work at that place. No, God said I mustn't work there. God said, God said, God said, God said. Be very, very careful of using the God card and not showing obedience. Maybe you need to go look at yourself in the mirror and go, am I just avoiding doing what I know God is telling me to do? Right? So we confess with our mouth, and if you know you need to get baptized, I want you to come talk to me after the service, specifically. Because there's something about baptism that's the first step of obedience. And if you really think about it, it's really not that much. Really not giving up that much. Maybe in winter you're giving up that much. As a pastor, I feel like I'm giving up a lot if I'm baptizing somebody in the winter. But jokes aside, like we can laugh about it because we all know, like, it's really not that much. You know, if you